I believe combat should be more than simply running into the enemy and rolling dice. There should be tactical opportunities. Every idea has an advantage and disadvantage. Every choice has a risk and reward. Here are ideas that can swing the tide of battle to your advantage if you have the tactical skill to exploit them. The first tip is to take advantage of cover. The most straightforward defensive advantage on the battlefield is cover. Soft cover, like a hedge, gives an enemy a -10 modifier to hit. Medium cover, like a wooden fence, gives an enemy a -20 modifier to hit. Hard cover, like a stone wall, gives an enemy a -30 modifier to hit. The key to using this tactical resource is to protect your flanks with cover. This gives you cover against enemies that attempt to surround you. The second tip is to take advantage of elevation changes. In this system, you can usually exploit both high ground and low ground to give cover and concealment. For example, if you take a position over the crest of a hill to fire arrows at an enemy at the bottom of that hill, you will probably have cover and concealment. You gain cover because the lower part of your body is blocked by the hill, and concealment because the enemy cannot see you if you move behind the crest of the hill. Low ground can give you the same advantages. For example, firing arrows from a trench gives cover since your lower body is protected by the ground, and concealment because the enemy loses sight of you if you duck. The third tip is to use difficult terrain. Difficult terrain provides two major advantages. The first advantage is a debuff to attack accuracy. For example, attacking whilst in the mud, heavy rain, or difficult terrain gives a -10 modifier to hit. Attacking or dodging in the deep snow, water, or other arduous terrain gives a -30 modifier. The second advantage is slow or treacherous movement. The Game Master might slow down movement in that area. The fourth tip is to outnumber the enemy. The simplest way to gain an advantage is to have more people. If you outnumber an opponent 2 to 1, you gain a bonus of +20 to hit your opponent in melee combat. If you outnumber an enemy by 3 to 1, you gain an even larger bonus of +40 to hit. Further, at the end of every round, all outnumbered opponents lose one advantage. Outnumbering is generally determined by how many characters are engaged with each other. The fifth tip is to consider morale. Most enemies do not fight to the death. Most enemies run away after 50% of their side dies or 75% suffer serious injuries. Some factors may push them to stay longer, like having a hardcore leader or advanced training. If your party looks weak and frail, they may stay longer as an example. If their leader dies, then they may flee sooner. The sixth tip is to gain advantage. Advantage represents your momentum in combat and is gained when you outwit, defeat, or otherwise dominate your opponents. Each advantage you secure adds a +10 to any appropriate combat test or psychology test. See psychology on page 190. This will directly boost your character's performance. The seventh tip is to understand that positioning matters. Attacking an engaged opponent in the sides or rear gives a +20 modifier to hit. This means you should avoid solo flanking maneuvers unless you can deal massive damage or withstand massive damage. Staying shoulder to shoulder with allies is the safest move. Retreat if you are at a disadvantage. The eighth tip is to understand the benefits and drawbacks of size. Bigger enemies will deal more damage but are easier to shoot with ranged weapons. Shooting an enormous target, griffin size, gives a +40 modifier to hit. Try to fight larger enemies at range and smaller enemies in melee. The ninth tip is to learn your fighting style. Mounted combat, ranged combat, two-weapon fighting, and using a shield have advantages and disadvantages. Learn your fighting style. The last and most impactful tip is to use interactive objects. The secret weapon in winning an impossible fight is interacting with the environment. Lighting the enemy camp on fire, pushing a wagon down a steep hill into the enemies, poisoning the food and water supply. This is hard to teach, but extremely strong if you could spot the opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time.